Hensley. Thanks for joining us for Navigating Life Transitions, a podcast where we bring together advisors experienced in financial life planning to talk about ways to navigate life's biggest changes, challenges, opportunities, and decisions. From growing a family to losing a loved one, promotions, retirement, marriage to divorce, we discuss these pivotal moments that could benefit from the guidance a financial advisory team can provide. So let's talk today about growing a family. Of course, everyone has a different journey when they grow their family. Regardless of the path you take, though, some considerations might help pave the way for you. Joining me are two advisors from JNBA Financial Advisors, serving clients in Minnesota, Florida, and throughout the U.S. Elise Huston and Noel, who work with people who find themselves at this life transition, and both are parents. And so I'll start with the question of the day. Elise, when you had kids, were you ready for that transition?
Oh gosh, are you ever ready? No, my husband and I had spent a lot of time before we had kids really thinking about, we knew we wanted kids. It was kind of just when was the question. And is it once you have a house? Is it once you are at a certain earning level? It's so hard to know what is ready. But we knew this is what we wanted and that we would make it work, and we were willing to be flexible and adjust our lives for that. So I guess in theory, we were as ready as one can be. But yeah, I don't know. Noel, what do you think?
Definitely not. Anecdotally, the first time I changed a diaper was shortly after my daughter was born. So you could say I had a steep learning curve.
Okay, but you did it, and I applaud you for that.
Okay.
Well, of course, when you add a whole human being to your family, in some cases more than one, your expenses are going to increase. So what are some basic considerations, Noel, that you really want to think about as you prepare to grow a family?
Yeah, I think some are more apparent than others. I mean, the ones that stick out as obvious are, is your home large enough? Is there enough room in your vehicles for another family member? Through a financial perspective, I think the one that gets talked about the most is the cost of childcare or the cost of diapers and formula. So people are pretty aware of that. But I think something that needs to be considered a little bit more is, what kind of benefits do you have through your employer? I mean, how flexible is your job? Do you have certain flexibility around when and where you work? Other kind of benefits to take a closer look at would be, do you have a dependent care FSA that you can contribute to? Or even, what kind of healthcare plan are you currently enrolled in? And is it conducive for additional doctor's visits and hospital bills? Things like that.
Yeah, because you can, with the life change, you can change your health plan, and it makes sense to look at that. Okay, well, childcare, which is enormous. I remember colleagues telling me, I was fortunate. My husband and I had different work shifts, so we didn't have to do childcare in the traditional sense of taking our kids somewhere else. But colleagues would tell me what they were paying, and it was more than our mortgage payment at the time, which is astounding.
Yeah, I think that's still the case today. I mean, when talking with friends, colleagues, even clients of ours, their childcare expenses really do rival that of their mortgage expense. It's basically almost a 1-for-1, which I think is overwhelming financially, for especially if you're having kids maybe in your 20s or 30s and you're still tackling student loan payments yourself and some other debt obligations that you have. But that's really just kind of the starting point, I guess I would say, in terms of financial considerations to just start to think through. Oftentimes we'll hear people say, oh gosh, we just got to get through these daycare years, and then we're going to be saving so much money. Once we're done with that expense, it's going to be so great. I do think that there's oftentimes this misunderstanding or underestimation of just how much it does cost, even after daycare. Once you have expenses like summer camps, after school activities, hockey, dance, you hear often about how expensive those activities themselves can be. Maybe your child is needing to take advantage of some tutoring opportunities, and there's some expenses with that. So all of those are expenses just to plan for. And I guess I would say maybe not assume that there's just expenses when they're little and then it'll get a lot easier. The expenses just change over time. And another one can be education, frankly. I mean, making a decision as a family, maybe for you, it's really important to send your kids to private school. And so understanding what that added cost could be for your family, should you be sending your kids K through 12 to private school, but also maybe you want to fully fund college and grad school and all future school opportunities for your children. So planning for that, saving for that will be important. And, 529 plans are a great option. We'll be asked kind of when to start. And I'd say if that's important to you, once you have their social security number and we can open an account, it's not a bad time to start. We talk about this quite a bit in another one of our podcasts about giving to kids and grandkids and just how to save for education and think about that. But certainly working with a financial advisor can help you save for not only education, but all those larger expenses.
And I just think with so many people now who understand the lifelong implication of a huge college loan, that the parents of today are going to be way more interested in those 529 plans and other strategies than parents of my generation, a lot of whom just like, oh, they'll get a scholarship. No, don't count on that.
Right. And now, through recent legislation, there's become opportunities too that if you don't use the whole 529 plan, there may be ways to convert some of those dollars to a Roth IRA for that child. And so, nice. There was a lot of times too, I think, fear of overfunding the plan. And so now that there's maybe some other options, but that again too is where we can do a lot of planning to try to estimate future cost of college and to say, okay, if we want to conservatively plan to fund a certain amount of college, how do we do that? And what amount do you need to save? Or if grandparents or aunts and uncles want to, give them $100 at their birthday, well, 529 plan is also not a bad place to save those dollars.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. Some of the change to expenses, your family expense, can happen before the baby is even there. So getting into the idea of fertility treatments and adoption, at least both of these things are pretty spendy items.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, both fertility treatments and adoption are great avenues to explore when growing your family, but they can oftentimes come with just higher price tags. So if you do end up utilizing fertility treatment or starting that that adoption process, we can certainly help you think about how best to fund these expenses, because oftentimes for people, they can be somewhat unexpected. You might not always have been planning on going through fertility treatments and adoption. So a short-term plan might be needed.
And the number of people in terms of fertility who are looking at having to use treatment, or they know someone, actually, I'll admit you guys supplied me with this statistic, but it kind of caught me by surprise. 4 in 10 adults, 42%, say that they either have used fertility treatments or they know somebody who has, which is a huge percentage, because you tend to think that that's just it's not going to happen to me, tiny little percent. It's bigger than you think.
Yeah, I think fertility treatments specifically are just much more common than we realize, as it's just one of those topics that people oftentimes don't talk about. It can be somewhat personal and private, so it does maybe to some feel a little less common than we would maybe realize. I myself have gone through in vitro fertilization, or IVF, to grow our family, and I know many friends and family, as I went through my process, who shared that they too had taken that same journey to growing their family. But there's also many other fertility treatments that, you could explore that are less invasive and less expensive, that are fairly common. Knowing that, depending on your needs, a single IVF cycle could cost $30,000 or more. But I think on average, nationally, it's closer to maybe $15,000 to $20,000. But that can be a really big expense for a family.
Well, that's one cycle, so you could go through more than one.
Yeah, I think they say on average, the typical is maybe 2 if you're having to go through in vitro fertilization. And while treatments like IVF are becoming more common and maybe being talked about more and more, I should note, though, that they are still somewhat less frequently utilized. I think only about 5% of couples who have infertility actually go forward with IVF treatment. But again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of other fertility treatment options that are available that are less invasive, that are worth exploring. So I guess my recommendation would be, if that's the path you want to go down to, or you feel like you want to explore further to grow your family, kind of the first step in understanding how that might impact things financially for you would be to figure out what might be covered through insurance, specifically your health insurance. Some states are quite different. Each state is actually very different in this sense. I have learned. And so, in Minnesota, it's not super common for your health insurance to cover fertility treatments, but it's worth exploring because even having some assistance from your insurance can be really helpful. But maybe you're also, you've been in a high deductible health insurance plan and you've been contributing to your health savings account all these past years, have a good balance in that account. Now that's a great savings vehicle to use to help cover the cost of fertility treatments. That's what it was there for, is for medical and health related expenses. And it'll be a tax-free distribution too to help cover these costs, which is great. But if you don't have, health insurance coverage or an HSA, I would say the next, just really maybe talk with the clinic you're working with to understand what, if any, financial packages and options they would make available to you. What, if any, financing do they have? Because then you can really start to think about, okay, based off of what insurance might cover, what the clinic is able to do for me, how much am I going to have to fund, and when do I have to have those funds available? And then you can really put together a plan and budget to figure out, okay, I know I want to go forward with this, but how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah. And I feel like having a financial advisor help with that is fabulous because I suspect a lot of people just think that the clinic is going to help them figure it all out. And that's not their specialty.
Right. And I mean, candidly, I know even going through it myself, the last thing I really wanted to be worrying about was the financial component of it because it is a big emotional undertaking, be it preparing for all the different appointments and the waiting that can sometimes occur in this process. Yeah. And so having a partner to help you think through the financial component and just feel like, okay, I have a good plan there. You can then spend more time thinking about, okay, how can I build a community and a support system to help me get through what is sometimes an isolating process and when you feel like you're going through it alone. And there's a lot of great community support out there, be it through in-person or online groups if you don't feel comfortable talking with friends and family about it. So I would definitely say it's worthwhile to create a financial plan with your professional, but to also seek other community support too, just to help you navigate this path.
And that's just one side of it. So a lot of people will choose, Noel, the adoption path, and that is not inexpensive either. That's another consideration to take.
Yeah, and adoption is a significant undertaking, both emotionally and financially. In our experience working with our clients who have adopted, it can also be quite costly and complex as well. On average, an adoption costs $20,000 to $45,000 from start to finish, and it also depends a lot on what state you live in and whether you're working through an agency or with an attorney. Looking at all the various aspects of it, our recommendation would be that you work very closely with an attorney and a CPA, not only to make sure the documents and paperwork are filed correctly, but to make sure you take advantage of any eligible tax credits.
Yeah, that's a good one too. And you may not be aware of everything that's out there. So beyond what's happening with your personal finances, the expenses, what are some other considerations that you want to be thinking about as you begin this journey of growing your family?
Other than, I guess, the fun of nesting and putting together your nursery and, just...
You're never going to sleep again.
Yes, exactly. Taking that solo trip to Target one last time before you always have a companion. No, I would say another really important one is just to really think about what adjustments might be needed to your estate plan. Specifically, looking at your will, naming guardians for your children should something happen to you and your partner. Who's going to be taking care of your kids while they're minors? Are you on the same page with your spouse about who that person might be? And then two, if you have assets that you want to leave to your kids as minors, you maybe you have provisions in your will that they be left to them in trust. So who's going to be the trustee who helps to facilitate distributions to your kids while they're minors under that trust agreement? So certainly estate planning is going to be an important one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say following up what Elise said, I think it's also really important to look at life insurance needs and disability insurance needs, because not only are you adding another member to your household, so you may need additional coverage there, but depending on what you end up doing on the estate planning side, you may need to change the beneficiary designations on those policies. So outside of that, looking through the tax perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense of making sure you're taking advantage of any available tax credits or deductions, whether you're contributing to a 529 plan or simply the child care credit.
For sure. There are those who still have a parent who is at home. And I have read that a lot of times people don't consider insurance on that parent because they think, well, they're not providing any income. But if you didn't have that parent there, your financial situation is going to change drastically too. So insurance isn't just for the primary breadwinner or the breadwinner. It's for everybody.
Definitely. Yeah, you have to look at things very holistically, I think, and it's not just about the immediate. You have to look much further out into the future about what is the financial impact going to be by one of the parents passing away or becoming disabled.
A lot to game out. Yeah. And disability is a huge thing. Everyone thinks everything's going to go just fine. And we've all heard the horror stories. So whether you're ready or not, it's a huge decision, but we do want to step back a little bit and share the joy, right? It's an exciting time of your life.
It is.
Parenting is a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it is. Being a mom myself, I can say I know for me, it's definitely one of the most rewarding things that I do in my life. And while I may still ask myself that question that you asked earlier, am I ready or am I doing a good job? I know that it's just brought so much joy to our family and those new little members. I'm so grateful that they're here. And so my hope is that, our discussion today and this conversation just emphasizes the importance, though, of bringing those professional partners into the conversation, making them aware of this big moment in your life, because then our hope is to help you navigate that change, put together the plan that helps to sort through all these moving parts that we discussed today so that you can just really enjoy this really special time, because it is definitely life-changing, but it's wonderful.
Well,
yeah, and as our clients tell us all the time, it goes by way faster than you think it will.
I can tell you that the parenting never ends. I have 2 adults, and it continues for as long as you're alive, obviously, but to that point their needs will change, and that financial plan should keep changing. So you guys are part of the equation, not just at the beginning, but throughout.
Exactly. And our hope too is to be that proactive partner to help you identify, hey, when has something changed that maybe results in us needing to revisit the plan, be it revisiting your estate documents, cash flow, savings opportunities, tax credits. That is really the role that we play in advocating for you financially.
Yes. And someday they will be on their own and you will notice a savings in the budget. Well, I want to thank Elise and Noel for a really fun discussion, and thanks to our listeners as well. We do hope you'll listen to our other Navigating Life Transitions podcasts and get the full list of available episodes online at jnba.com. Click on the Insights tab, and that's where you'll find the podcast page. You can always help yourself to the free resources on JNBA's website. Once again, that's jnba.com. And if you have questions about considerations as you look to grow your own family, or if you want to learn more about how JNBA can help you with your financial life goals, you can give them a call, 952-844-0995, or use the contact form on jnba.com. And that's where you can schedule a complimentary, no-obligation call with their experienced and multi-generational team. Thanks again for listening. I'm Kim Inslee, and I look forward to navigating more life transitions with you on our next podcast.
Past performance may not be indicative of future results. Different types of investments involve varying degrees of risk. Therefore, it should not be assumed that future performance of any specific investment or investment strategy, including the investments and/or investment strategies recommended and/or undertaken by JNBA Financial Advisors, LLC, henceforth JNBA, or any non-investment related content will be profitable, equal any corresponding indicated historical performance levels, be suitable for your portfolio or individual situation, or prove successful. JNBA is neither a law firm nor a certified public accounting firm, and no portion of its services should be construed as legal or accounting advice. JNBA is not an insurance agent, and no portion of the above should be construed as insurance advice. All insurance issues should be addressed with the insurance professional of your choosing. Moreover, you should not assume that any discussion or information contained in this podcast serves as a receipt of or as a substitute for personalized investment advice from JNBA. A copy of our current written disclosure brochure discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request or at jnba.com. The scope of services to be provided depends upon the needs and the requests of the client and the terms of the engagement. Please remember, if you are a JNBA client, please contact JNBA in writing if there are any changes in your personal, financial situation, or investment objectives for the purpose of reviewing, evaluating, and revising our previous recommendations and/or services, or if you would like to impose, add, or to modify any reasonable restrictions to our investment advisory services. Unless and until you notify us in writing to the contrary, we shall continue to provide services as we do currently. Please note, all services provided by Kim Inslee are separate and independent of JNBA Financial Advisors. For complete disclosure information, please visit jnba.com/disclosure.